Today we are talking about gambling online on the blockchain, and this is a really exciting project that I'm really interested in digging deep into. It's called Rollbit. It's on the Solana network, and it has obviously got a huge amount of traction of late. Prices has been skyrocketing. We're going to talk about what Rollbit is, what it's used for, what you can gamble with it. Is the price any good? Is it actually a good investment? And of course, joining me as always is Will. How are you, mate?
Hey Simon, glad to be here. I took a look at Rollbit this week and I was really surprised and excited because this was the first time I've seen an online casino that is Web3 that is actually really nice. And it was chock full of different games and activities you could do. The interface was really nice, and it kind of brought me back to the old days when EOS was still a big thing. It was fast and new, and there was a whole bunch of people trying different gambling games there. Now the difference is that this is one service, one website, Web2 and Web3 combination with a whole bunch of games and really cool things going on in there.
Yeah, I remember not necessarily EOS, but there was one called Funfair back in the day that was supposed to be an online gambling. I think it's still kind of hanging around in the background, but it never really gained traction. And I guess the thing that Rollbit is a bit different from just Funfair alone is that Rollbit obviously has the casino games, your blackjack and your roulettes and all those kind of online stuff, but it's also integrating sports betting. So you can go bet on the NBA, the FIFA World Cup, kind of things like that. So they've integrated actual real world sports betting into it
Mm.
as well, which I think is also makes it very exciting. So they've got multiple revenue streams. They're also allowing people to trade on the platform itself, so they're getting just network effects from trading. They are allowing fiat direct on ramps as well. So they're kind of building this really nice user experience out as well, which I think is a big thing that makes it unique and different to the other ones. And I guess they're starting to get network effects. You can clearly see that people are starting to use this gambling platform as well.
The numbers are crazy. They've got, I think, a little bit over 1 million registered users. And according to the numbers they gave us, $40 million wagered on a daily basis. And even their social marketing is pretty big. They've got 150,000 followers on Twitter. So, what I really love about it is that you mentioned you can bet on real world issues, but then you can also bet on things in crypto. But then on top of that, they've got all sorts of other really cool features. There's NFT marketplaces and loot boxes and things like that. And just really surprising how much they have on offer. I've tried a whole bunch of other gambling apps, Web2 and Web3, and I've got to say, Rollbit is probably one of my favorite, if not my personal favorite. It's got everything I want to play with.
Absolutely, and I think when they are integrating it all together so well and the user experience is so well, I think that's kind of what makes people want to use it. And yeah, you said like
Mm.
$40 million daily wagered on there. I think it's about like $1 million daily revenue that
Oh my
Robert is
God.
accruing. So this is a serious moneymaker at the moment for them, and
Mm.
it's no wonder that the token price is starting to go off. It's no wonder that people are seeing it now because it's making some serious money. So what they've done recently as well, which is why it's had a much more recent news, is that they created a buyback system. So some of the revenue that's coming from the casino itself is going to go to buying back the token and burning it. So again, that's going to be reducing supply, pushing up pressure on price. Everyone gets excited about things like that, don't they?
Mm. And it's been around for a while. I think since 2020 is when they started building it. The thing that surprised me was that I was looking at first I looked at the website and I said to myself, how come I've never heard of this token before? How come I've never heard of this place before? It's so amazing. Then I thought to myself, how is the token doing? And looking at the prices, it'd been really flat for a long time. And up until I think a couple of months ago, it was at fractions of a penny, 0.002 cents, and now it's more than a penny. It's I think it's like 20 cents. That's 100x in the last couple of months. That's kind of crazy. And I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier before, and you mentioned it might be because of the burn. We've got a burn chart here, and it looks like on some days they've done 10% burns, 30% burns, 20% burns. And so this is 20% on the revenue, and sometimes the revenue goes up to even half a million, sometimes even up to $1 million. And so 10% of that has been used to burn the token in a single day. That's kind of crazy.
Absolutely, it's crazy, and so that obviously has a large effect on price. But the announcement of the burn is only like in the last week or so, so it's seen the price accrue about 100% in about last week, really. So I would say that the January time that you were talking about, when it was fractions of cents, they didn't.
Mm,
I didn't know of it back then. Probably no one knew it back then. It didn't have much of a market cap because probably no one was using it. But around
mm,
April, May-ish, people started using the platform. So I think most people who were in early in this probably got in around the 2 cent mark, and they're now basically 10x. So if you were randomly knew about this back in January when it was at fractions of cents, there would have been no liquidity. You probably could have only got $100 worth of it on some random DEX, whereas now obviously it is on most of the major DEXs now because it's actually obviously got momentum. So that's when DEXs tend to add them as liquidity, or people add liquidity to the DEXs, I should say. So realistically, yes, it's done 100x, probably done 1,000x really from January prices. But reality is most people who are in on this space early probably have got it sitting on about a 10x at the moment, which I think people need to accept. That's actually more realistic of what you can achieve in these things because most people aren't that early on a project, I think.
mm. It's really difficult to find a project with a lot of liquidity and be early. Maybe if you found it super early and you had a long time to accumulate, you might be able to get a little bit more, but it's still difficult to put in a significant amount in these low cap tokens without moving the price so much. Now we've got a high market cap, high liquidity. It's easier to get into, but then I suppose the question remains of whether we should get into it or not. It's almost like the curse of liquidity. You either have a lot and it's almost a little late to enter, or you have too little liquidity and it's such a good time to enter. I suppose that's always a challenge, isn't it?
It's always the risk to reward that you got to try and figure out in these things. So
Mm,
this is a project that we haven't talked about a lot about what it actually does because it's just online gambling. I think people basically get that. But the thing that
mm,
obviously I'm always interested in is tokenomics and investment opportunity here. And if you go on Twitter and you're searching for Rollbit, you're going to see all sorts of people shouting it to the moon. So it's definitely been picked up by a lot of, I guess, the shillers out there. A lot of hype around it at the moment about where it's going to go. I think the tokenomics of it are actually pretty great because obviously it is a revenue making system. So it is making money. So that's an important feature which I look for when I'm looking at investment opportunity. Does the project actually make money? And this one certainly ticks that box. So it's got that. It's also burning tokens. So it's actually, I guess, using some of that revenue and giving it back to holders in a way by burning tokens. So reducing the supply allows the price to go up basically because you're reducing the supply. Where can it go? So it's already at like $1 billion fully diluted market cap. So in that regard, it's quite large. At its current market cap with what's actually circulating supply, it's $600 billion. So most of the tokens are already available. There's still a few locked up, about 30% still locked up. But where can it go is the kind of question. And I
mm.
think the thing that we can really do here is that this product exists in Web 2. There's plenty of online sports gambling apps that exist in the traditional system that we can compare this to. And this Rollbit is effectively going after that. It's going after these other online gambling platforms. And so, simple thing that I looked at is, well, because I can't compare this to Ethereum, I can't say, will it go similar to Ethereum's market cap? You can't do that. It's not the same thing. But when you compare it to some of the biggest gambling companies out there, I looked up MGM Resorts and DraftKings and some of the biggest ones out there. Their market caps are about $16 billion and $13 billion, respectively. So that's what Rollbit's chasing. Can it get as big as some of the biggest online gambling systems out there? If it can do that, then yeah, we are talking, 10x, 20x kind of price range. Or so that would put it at, let me look at my numbers. So it would put it at about a $2 to $4 kind of range is where it could possibly get to if it can get as big as that. So that's how I look at this. Can this get as big as that? Is my kind of question that I'm asking.
I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it totally makes a lot of sense to compare it with these kinds of products because, to be fair, it will never get to be the size of Ethereum or Bitcoin. Those are totally different services, spaces, industries, and this is gambling. And so, how big can gambling get? And yeah, 16 billion does seem to be the target. And I think something to remember is that these companies have been out there for a long time and they've built their audience for a long time. And it's also possible that their revenues are much higher, thereby justifying such a high market cap. So I guess one thing that counterbalances that notion is that this is, in theory, a deflating token in that it's getting burned over time. So I suppose that kind of helps it out. But I personally feel like I am a little bit too late in terms of entering this market, in that it's already seen it's 100x. And so, yeah, maybe we'll see 20x because of the burn. And maybe the excitement of the market and maybe an irrational bull market. Maybe we will see those values. For me personally, I would want to see it drop, maybe a good 10x. Then I can start to think about picking it up. Maybe we've seen it at the peak. Maybe, I don't know. The god of crypto will smile on me and just let it drop for a little bit so that I can pick it up. But I feel like it's too late. I think the thing that it shows us here is that we can also start to look at gambling platforms. It looks like it's a really cool space. Other people might see this, and maybe there's other projects coming out. And one mistake that I personally made is that I haven't really been looking at gambling platforms. So this to me opens up my eyes in that let me watch this space, and there might be other similar projects out there with similar tokenomics that could grow just as fast as this one.
Absolutely, and that's a good thing to think about because if there are other gambling platforms on Web3, then that will obviously create competition, and then Rollbit then trying to achieve those high valuations comparable to traditional markets makes it tougher. Obviously, competition will eat away at some of their revenue. So that's a very important thing to take into account. I mean, I guess the other thing to think about for the perspective of who's using this, well, who's using this is currently just crypto natives because traditional market people don't care about it being on blockchain. I just don't think
Mm.
if you're an online gambler, you've already got so many great apps on your phone, you just don't care about it being on blockchain. You're gambling, you're having a good time, the user experience is what it's all about. So that's the real challenge I feel for Rollbit is that it needs crypto natives to use it. Can it branch out and break down that wall of people who are non-crypto natives or wanting to use their platform? That's their challenge, and they kind of got that to a degree with their fiat on ramp. I think that helps, alleviate that. But that's the biggest challenge I see it is that it has to bring in users who aren't crypto natives.
Yeah, it really needs to. And one thing that it's done correct is that it hasn't tried to be completely decentralized, meaning that it's difficult to stop, but then the UX becomes slower and more clunky. It's just admitted that it's a gambling app and it wants to allow Web3 people to gamble. And so it's created a beautiful Web2 interface. And there's a couple of smart contracts in there to make it provably fair. But outside of that, it's mostly Web2. So yeah, to completely agree with you, Simon. It does need to pull in those other people, but then at the same time, to move them from other apps like Sportsbet and depending on the country you are, into this, they need to have something different in here that they can gamble with. So I mean, they've got their Web2 betting already. They can bet on horses and matches and things like that. The only thing they can get here, I suppose, are lotteries, and maybe I suppose the 1000x trading. It's a form of gambling. If you're trading leverage at 1000x, at that point, it's a little bit of a gamble. So maybe it could pull a small section of that, and I'm not sure how much bigger it could get really. So to like what you said, somebody already has an amazing app. Like they really need a compelling reason to move to this one. And I can't say that I see yet. And so I feel as if Rollbit's trajectory has probably reached a steady growth rate versus exponential, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, when just on the price alone, if you go look at a chart, it's 10 next in the last month. So it's not a great price to buy in right now. I mean, you mentioned earlier that
Mm,
you'd be interested in if it 10x down. I don't think that's going to happen,
mm,
but it could easily drop from this because it's had a huge run up. And so I might be interested in it if it does have more like a 50% drop. I could possibly potentially see myself putting some money into that. But right now, I'm chasing something that I've missed. So I wouldn't be putting money
mm,
into this right now, but it's definitely something I'm watching. We talked about obviously the existing traditional systems in the space who obviously already have all the users. And so I think that's one of the big risks I see for Rollbit as well, is that if the market decides that they do want these applications on blockchain, what's to stop those big betting agencies just transitioning some of their system over to blockchain if that's what the market demands? So that's a real risk
Mm,
for Rollbit in general, is that it's only crypto natives and the outside world's not there. They want to bring the outside world in. Well, if they manage that as well and other people go, no, I want this on blockchain, then what do you think those big sports betting agents are going to do? They're going to move into the space. So the big players in
mm,
the existing system can easily wipe them out just by moving in, because they'll bring in liquidity, they'll bring in users, they'll bring in their far further reaching probably team to build out a better system. So that's a big risk I see for Rollbit, is that if they are very successful, big boys in the space will go, hey, hang on, I'm going to eat your lunch,
mm,
and they'll move in. I guess the other risk I see is that online gambling has lots of regulation restrictions in different countries around the world. So that makes it difficult for them to play this game in many regions. Obviously, it's online. VPNs can get around this very easily, but if they get too big, that will have government regulators coming to chase them down, trying to do something. So that could be some friction for them actually continuing to grow and go forward, because online gambling is a great revenue raiser for governments in general with how they pass out the
mm,
licensing. And so if there's an
mm.
online gambling like this that's avoiding that, governments don't like that because, hey, everyone else pays license fees. Well, the people who pay the license fees won't like that either. So there's a bit of friction that could go on then when government agencies, come into the space with regulation. So two friction points there, but still in a growth phase. What do you think? What are your thoughts about the risks there?
Well, in terms of regulation, something that just occurred to me is that I'm not sure whether they have released the licenses that they have, or if they have licenses. Sometimes a lot of these projects just go out there and they launch, and lo and behold, they get more successful than they expected. And at some point, the regulators do come after them. This happens all the time in crypto. So the big risk is that uh, if they're not currently regulated, then they're really facing competition, because the other people, the big companies, are completely regulated and audited at all the time, and this could be shut down. That could be a pretty big risk, and it's Web 2, so it can be shut down. Unlike other projects, let's say running on EOS or Ethereum or anything like that, if it does get shut down, that is a risk to the token and to however much anybody has in there. And I suppose one last thing is hacks. It's Web 2 is still fairly new. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's kind of trying to figure out how to hack it. There's always a small chance, but the good thing is that as long as you're gambling a small amount, uh, that would be the biggest risk anyone would be holding if it was a hack. But then if the regulators did come up and manage to shut it down, then the risk would be the token. That would be a pretty big risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a centralized service. So I guess there is risk when you are using their platform because they have your money and they have custody of it. So there's a potential for rug pull here, but I don't see that for this anymore, because why would they want to kill the goose that's laying the golden egg for them? It's making plenty of money. So it doesn't seem like this is an operation that's going to rug pull and just take all the money that everyone's deposited on the platform. Could be wrong. We said similar things about FTX. FTX was making plenty of money, but they still did stupid things. So you never really know. That's always a risk when you're using a centralized service.
Mm.
But hey, people like to gamble, and this is a great
Yeah,
gambling app, and it's on Web3 as well. So it's all on Solana. So pretty cool
yeah,
project.
yep. I really like what they've done, and I think they've kind of hit the right formula in that they didn't try to just go Web 3 all the way and super decentralized. Sometimes we don't need that, and Web 3 is going to get there, and it's getting faster, and there's all these cool ways coming out to optimize it and improve the UX. But until then, for some kinds of projects, it's totally okay to be part Web 2 and part Web 3, and I feel like they've kind of hit the sweet spot. And I hope we're going to see more projects like that, because they'll obviously become more interesting to use. A lot more people will be using them. I hope I see more games, gambling apps, and a whole bunch of other cool ideas. So this is really
Yeah.
cool, and kudos to them.
Absolutely. I mean, just to to wrap it in a bow at the end here is that I think this definitely has the potential to be another further 10x from here, even 20x. But I think we've missed the boat, unfortunately. I personally look at the price now and I go, I think I've just missed this one, unfortunately. But other people might have a bit more of a stronger say in that, and prices in a proper bull market make no sense, and valuations against traditional markets make no sense, and so could definitely do way better than that. I guess individuals can make their own choice about whether they see it as a good investment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's a beautiful product, and looking forward to see what new updates they come up with.
Absolutely. And so let's leave it there, guys. So if you enjoyed this and you made it this far, please like, please comment, please subscribe. Help us get our message out there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Simon. See you guys soon.